Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Total Wellness at the J. I am very excited today to be joined by two of my very closest friends and colleagues, Scott Ehrlich, who is the president and CEO of the David Posnack JCC in Davie, Florida, and Betzy Lynch, the president of the Lawrence Family JCC on the Jacobs Family campus in San Diego, California. So thank you both for being here with me. Today, we're going to explore a little bit. The three of us have been deeply involved in the idea of inclusion at the J, and taking it from outside of our local work that each of us were involved in a very distinct way and trying to expand it across the JCC movement. We're going to explore that as part of our wellness. And for those of you that have been watching or listening along, you know that here at the J, we look at wellness as a much broader topic than just diet and exercise. We really think there are 15 different aspects of wellness, and inclusion is absolutely one of them, as is peoplehood. And we're going to kind of explore how those two things come together. So I'm going to start by just introducing the idea of us as a town square, a place that you can get to from anywhere and get anywhere from. And what does that mean to each of us in terms of creating that environment of inclusion for all in our work? Scott, why don't you start?
Well, I think one of the special things about, a JCC is that, the space that we have, whether it's fitness space or outside space or whatever space that we're using, can become an inclusive space for everybody. And we can create a culture of inclusion because of the dynamic age groups that we have here. We have, 1-year-olds, we have all the way through, 100-year-olds. And inclusion also means, inclusive of people with, cancer and Parkinson's and other diseases, as well as, autism, people on the spectrum. And at RJ, we really try to reach out and try to help everybody reach. We talk about wellness, and I always talk about peak performance as a former athlete. How do we get peak performance for each individual based on who they are when it comes to their socialization, their fitness, their self-care, or even their work? We have a big work program here for adults with developmental disabilities that we got granted through the federal government. Our Congresswoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, it was her big project. And, that really helped even expand our inclusive space.
I really appreciate Scott's perspective. And I think that there's a deep tie in both, Todd, to the work that you do in Tucson and also the work that Scott is doing in Fort Lauderdale, and to how that translates to the work that's happening here in San Diego. I think our approach is really understanding that the world is a really hard place. And when you experience the world differently, whether it be because of a physical disability, a cognitive disability, because of illness, because of race, because of being a part of a minority group, whatever that reason why the world becomes harder for you because you need to be seen and felt and heard in a different way, our goal is to be a place of yes, which is in other places where you're being told no, we want to be a yes, and we want to work with you as an individual to make sure that we make not only the accommodations for the way that a whole community might exist, but the accommodations for you specifically from the place where you started from and the place where we hope that you'll go with us. And I think sometimes that means that there are people whose needs that we can serve robustly, and sometimes we can serve part of their needs. And then our job is to walk hand in hand with them to find additional supports for needs that they need to be served by others. And so our concept of the town square is it's not just people showing up, but it's also other organizations that have specialization into particular things that we can attach to. And it's an inflow and an outflow. And we've had this in many partnerships. Actually, we were just honored by the ARC of San Diego, which is a national organization that has local chapters who serve people with developmental disabilities as Partner of the Year for our vocational programming. And we've provided paid internships in almost every department of the JCC in order to make sure that people who are living with disabilities that have a lot to contribute and a lot to learn vocationally have the opportunity to do so. And it's through those partnerships that we deepen our work together. And that's been a critical piece of also serving as the town square.
I think one of the things, I just want to pick up on the vocational idea, because I know Scott's been talking about this and Betzy for a long time. And one of the things that I find most meaningful is the way that we draw inspiration for one another. We're really happy that we just got a very generous grant to begin a vocational program here in Tucson. And, candidly, was really inspired by the work that you both do. So I think the more that we can be talking across JCCs and across communities, the better that we're able to serve our own community, because we can draw inspiration from one another and not have to reinvent the wheel, but really replicate things that are a best practice. So I thank you both for that.
I agree with you, Todd, and I actually think that broadens the town square, right? Which is like, who are we bringing into it with each other to learn the best practice? And our vocational programming actually started from the idea that we had started early intervention when kids were in preschool more than 30 years ago. And then that grew into the way we serve kids in camp and into our other programs. And now those kids that we've been serving all this time are now adults that need this additional support. So we as a community need to grow with the people that are growing with us. And I think this is the opportunity for every JCC to view and see the opportunities that might be of how does the community grow and evolve, and your services grow and evolve to meet those needs.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about what we're doing, and a lot of Jays are doing around the country, is that you have to have the openness to expand. When there's another idea where a board member comes to you, or you see something, we've had several blind people come through the J, and they were like, well, we need this and we need that, or we're having our sight dogs come through. You have to make those accommodations. And I think the JCCs are a great place for all of us to say, hey, we're ready to step up and make those accommodations, make everybody feel welcome at your center.
And Betzy, I do appreciate how you just expanded like the definition when we talk about inclusion. One of the things that we've started doing is working on ensuring the J is a dementia-friendly space. Right. As we continue to encounter people of all ages, some of those people who we encounter are affected and afflicted with dementia or early onset Alzheimer's, and we've really built another entire department of work around that, so that really the JB does become a community for all.
I think that's critical. And I think to Scott's point as well, which is like, when people are here and we identify and we can accommodate, but I think each of us have also taken a really proactive approach to audit what we're doing regularly, to make improvements and try to anticipate the needs of people before it even happens. And so that if we know and sort of audit our staff, how many of them know American Sign Language? Great. So if we have somebody that uses sign language as their primary form of communication, we know that we can pull on a couple of staff, even if it's not the staff person they met to start with, that there's somebody to bring in so that we can have an ease of a conversation and be communicated in the way that somebody needs that. I mean, we look at our cultural arts programming and we're trying to figure out all of the ways that, like, what does it feel like to be a person who experiences these kind of things in a different way? And it could be for a whole host of reasons, to make the space feel like they belong there too, without even them having to ask. And so it's that level of anticipation that comes through the learning of community members trusting in us to come, for us to help us learn to better accommodate the needs of not just them, but a larger, broader swath of people that we need to serve.
So the idea of us getting into this work, why is it JCC? What guides us? If we're guided by Jewish values, why is this important to us? How come this is an area of work beyond cultural arts or fitness or teaching children to swim or any of the things that we do? What guided you to come to this work? Why is this critical for JCCs across the movement to be doing this?
As I said before, I think peak performance and whatever it is, and whatever age you are, is really critical. How can we help each person be the best person they can be? And that's what JCCs do. Last year we started something called Transitions for preschoolers, because we realized that there's 1 in every 34 kids has autism, is on the spectrum. And so we realized that was going on because there was a lot of kids being asked to leave other preschools around us. And we were like, well, there's an opportunity to help people. So now we started with, 8 kids in one classroom, and now we're sold out with almost 30 kids in 3 classrooms, 3 teachers in a classroom, speech therapists, other therapists that come in throughout the day, because there was such a need. And now all the other schools are sending their kids here. There's got to be that outreach. I'll just go when it comes to preschoolers. That critical time when kids are 1 to 6 years old is so critical that you give them the extra help that's needed. And we provide that information to parents, because a lot of parents will be critical and say, "Hey, my kid doesn't need extra help. My kid, he'll grow out of it." And now parents are starting to realize, hey, you know what? It may cost a little bit more for speech therapy or these other therapists that might come in. But it's certainly worth it. I see my kid, really moving and advancing his skills, whether it's social or educational. They're advancing their skills, getting to the next level because we offer this at a J.
I think it is such a beautiful expression of seeing and identifying a need and being willing to jump in. And I think a lot of JCCs are on the front lines of seeing and identifying needs, being in relationships with people. But I'm going to take it up to like a really, really like 30,000 feet for a minute, which is we live in a world for which the concept of what it is to be a shared society has been somewhat lost. And I think in many ways what across the country, and particularly in our JCCs, I know for sure, what we strive to be is an imagination of what a shared society could be and the responsibility that we have to each other in order to share a society that is deeply caring, deeply committed to the well-being of all people. And so we have, in a micro way, the opportunity to set an example and to be a light in a world where mostly it's about all the things that I don't know, all the things that you're wrong about, all of the things that you can't do, to be a place of you can. And in order for you to be able to meet your peak performance, in order for you to maximize your well-being, I may need to do something differently in order to make sure that happens. Because that's what it is to be a shared society. And that's sad in 2025. I have to say, when we started doing this work, all 3 of us have been doing this for a long time and a long time together. And I think if you sat us down all of those decades ago and said, hey, in 2025, concepts of a shared society are going to be lost and gone, we'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, we're going to be really focusing on, fortifying the Jewish community and doing outreach and just everyone coming together and doing things that are joyous. And now our job is joy, but joy as resistance, not just joy as an expression of happiness.
No, I think that's fair. And I think that, JCCs, certainly, our JCCs have the opportunity to interact deeply with the broader community. And much of our membership and participants come from the broader community and experience Judaism and Jewish life in a way that hopefully is educational and creates opportunities for dialogue and does, in my view, a great deal to prevent versus combat the Jew hatred that does exist in our world today. And when we take it back to working with individuals with disabilities, I'll say for us, the vast majority of the participants in our programming come from the broader community, and they come here because our values resonate, as does the quality of our programming. So I'd like to just get a spin on that from you all.
I think it's right on, because who we serve is because we're Jewish, not because they are, right? Our whole idea is that anyone is welcome here. And while we specifically build a brand of Jewish community, it's Jewish community for every person, with the goal of them connecting to themselves, to connecting and making a friend, and having some connection to Jewish life. And if you happen to be Jewish, that's amazing, because maybe you're going to deepen your experience a little bit. And if you happen to be a faith other than Jewish or no faith at all, just the exposure and the idea of what Jewish life is about gives some level of inspiration of why we choose to be the particular in a universal world. And that helps to build the bridges that you're referring to in terms of prevention.
Todd?
And you know what? When you're a J and you're ready to step up and help the community, put yourself in a different view in the community. You're not just the preschool or the sports center. You're there out serving the public and serving the community with whatever disabilities that we're serving. And it really makes a difference. It shows that we care. Listen, we're all three of us are fundraisers. We're out there, trying to raise funds to help people. And, when we go out and talk to people about the programs that we're doing, people are very willing to say, hey, let me help this person. Let me pay for a week of camp for a special needs kid. Let me help a kid in your sunrise camp for kids with cancer. Let me give you 2 weeks for someone to come to the sunrise camp. People are willing to give. Jews are really willing to give to help others. And it's not just Jews. We're getting foundations that are not Jewish foundations to help us be able to serve populations and this population, which is really important. And I'll go back to one thing. When I was coming up in the field, I was a Special Olympics tennis coach, and in Miami, and people would say I was teaching tennis to high level people as well. And they go, "Why are you teaching those people?" And I was like, "What do you mean those people? Because these kids are more appreciative than any other person I've ever seen. I love doing this work." And I that's when I really got into it. I said, "What do you mean these people? We're all one people. We're all here to help each other. Everybody has, whatever their kryptonite is, or whatever their superpower is. Everybody has those things." So, I think the J is a great place for this all to happen, where we're a melting pot of people.
So I think that's a really interesting through line, Scott, because we recently, I would say in the last 18 months, opened the first universally accessible playground in the city of San Diego. And it's designed so that all of the elements not only serve people with physical disabilities, but also have elements for people who have sensory processing disorders, people who are non-speaking. We have communication boards on the playground to make it easy to have organic exchanges between kids. And the goal was as much about children who are labeled neurotypical as it was children with disabilities, because part of what children with disabilities oftentimes in their families experience is kids not being invited to birthday parties, not being invited to play dates. And part of it is that kids that are living with disabilities don't have the opportunity for organic play in the same way, and it impacts their life forever. And part of the goal of the playground was not just about providing that opportunity for the kids with disabilities, it was actually providing the opportunity for kids who are labeled neurotypical to actually play and exchange and learn and understand how to find somebody's superpower, how to find somebody's connection, and how to communicate and to be with them. And this is huge inspiration. The playground it is a city playground. It is open to the entire public while it's on the grounds of the JCC. And it was funded totally by private philanthropy, because the mission and the thought and the goal of this was to create a platform as an invitation of what it is to be an inclusive community. And I think you're right, Scott. I think there's a real responsibility for us to be able to share the joy in what it is to support a broader vision for all people to open their minds and really connect person to person.
And I think sometimes, Betsy, to that point, people look at inclusive work as really benefiting the individual with disabilities or the individual with dementia, and they lose sight of the enormous benefit to the rest of the community of being in an inclusive environment, because then everybody is learning and everybody is growing. And it's not a hierarchical thing. It's really very much a plane.
Yes. And that, I think, goes back to the town square conversation, right? Which is that I've as much learned from you as you to learn to me. And therefore, that is a level playing field. And it's not you giving and giving and giving to me. It's me also really receiving and taking back what you have to give.
So I want to pivot a little bit, because we are 37 some odd days away to host the JCC Maccabi Games this summer. And while I'm incredibly excited about welcoming the world here to Tucson for that experience, I'm particularly excited about this being the first non-pilot year of JCC Maccabi Access. And it still strikes me that 9 years ago, we sat in a room in New York, the three of us with other colleagues, and really dreamed. And I think we were Herzl, right? If you will, it is no dream. And I don't know that we ever could have imagined. And Betzy had the honor of hosting the first year of the pilot of JCC Maccabi Access, and Scott hosted the second year, and our colleague Joel in Houston hosted last year. And we've been able to get out of the pilot phase. Can you all talk for a moment about your experience with Access, and what it meant and what it means to you to have been in on the ground floor of such an impactful program?
Yeah, first of all, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you both and the rest of our colleagues that were there, but it was the three of us that really pushed and drove people crazy. I can imagine what it would look like. I was visioning it from day one. I knew what I wanted to see, and I knew what I wanted it to look like. And the greatest thing is that, can you imagine, now we have kids with developmental disabilities preparing themselves to go compete in the Access Games. So we call it the GAP Games because we have a Giverim adult program. We had the GAP Games. We have a preparation to get ready for the Access Games. There is a training session. So kids have something to look forward to go compete, in a fun atmosphere with other kids with the same abilities from around the world, really. I mean, they're coming from everywhere. And Todd, I'm really appreciative you're running the first official set of games where we're so excited for you. And again, I can imagine, and I'm just so grateful to both of you and what we've done, and JCCA for their leadership. And we're looking forward to many years of the Access.
I have to say, I think that we've done a lot of things, to the three of us together and independently in our work. And I would say if this was the only bit of our legacy that we leave for our communities, then Diane, it would have been enough. I mean, I feel like this was an opportunity not only for to normalize the idea that every teen deserves the opportunity to have this incredible sports and Jewish peoplehood experience, and that we were responsible to make sure that we removed the barriers and created a program that made that possible for every teen that wanted to do it, able to. And that's what we've done. And I feel like what the residual pieces beyond their own self-assurance, self-confidence, the ability to compete and have the unique experience that is JCC Maccabi Access, there's also a bigger and broader piece of really feeling both for their families and for themselves accepted and a part of Jewish peoplehood in a way that without access, their own personal and individual identities, having the opportunity to have a Jewish experience at this age and stage of life, we already know this is critical. We already know it because we know what residential camp does. We know what camp does. We know what Maccabi does. And for kids with disabilities to have missed those opportunities to have that imprint was a failure on our part. And now it exists. And I can honestly say, in large part, because of the two of you and some assistance from me, because you're champions of this in huge, huge ways. And the byproducts of it have ripples far beyond, I think, what we can even really know and understand. And I'm so grateful that we've platformed this opportunity for all teens.
And I'll stop for a moment. I want to talk a little bit more about it, just for anyone who is watching or listening who doesn't know, the JCC Maccabi Access Games are an integrated program with JCC Maccabi, which is an Olympic-style sporting event for Jewish teens 13 to 17. And the Access Games run alongside and integrated with that for Jewish teens with disabilities to be able to come and do the very same thing. We've been able to create a model that allows them a little bit shorter time together, but to do things that are both distinct and integrated. I'll tell you two stories, both from San Diego, where one of our kids who was participating in Access did not want to swim in the integrated swim meet. or the unified swim meet with the neurotypical kids, and to watch the other kids come and encourage and support and incrementally get her into the water and get her across the pool. To me, that was the value of community manifested in a way that you couldn't invent. It just happened. And I'm sure you all have experiences with your kids that just give you a greater sense of pride than words can really give.
For sure. I mean, I think back to Houston, where I was observing the games and I was at the swim meet. And, I knew the kids were from different delegations and whatever it was, but they were swimming. So I couldn't exactly see faces and I was cheering for different athletes, whatever. Anyway, we get to the closing thing and the Memphis delegation walks on the stage and Abby and Zach go on the stage. And these are two older teenagers that are now on the stage or whatever, receiving their medals. And I'm taken all the way back to my days as a camp director in Memphis, that both of them were two children who were included in our camp way back when they were 5 and 6 years old, all for them to be able to show up again on that stage. And we have moved like 3 times since and whatever it is, but to see that connection and to see that their through line of JCC experience brought them to that moment. I mean, like the waterworks were like, I was crying, their parents were crying when we all reconnected. It was like the most beautiful reunion.
And there's nothing better than the opening ceremonies, their ability to march with the teams and come out, and closing ceremonies. Those are emotional times. I mean, there's no better feeling than that. And they're leaving on such a high, ready to go back to the communities that they came from to do more and tell everybody about their experience. And the parents that are with them, because they have people traveling with them, they come back with such an effect on them. It affects your whole community. So we may have 20 or 30 athletes going to the games, but the effects are hundreds when they come back to the.
And the effects at opening ceremonies and throughout the games of the other athletes and their fellow teens in the delegation supporting one another, and really perhaps being able to behave in a way that they hadn't behaved before, to learn something new, to see the value of the whole community, because we're all here together. And I'm incredibly grateful to have been on and continue to be on this journey. So as we wrap up our time together, I want to just get your read on what's the big aspiration in terms of both inclusion and community building that you hold today. What's driving us forward in this really unique time where I think JCCs play such a powerful role in the idea of community building, both big and small?
I think it's what more we can do. I recently hired a special services director to explore all the services that we can have, whether it's senior services, whether it's, our Sunrise program for kids with cancer, or special needs programs, or, people that are blind, or people with other disabilities as well. We're really exploring to see what's out there and see how we can help people. And I think, we just got to keep on that path. We can never stop working on trying to improve who we are and what we are, and also collaborate with others, because there's so many other nonprofits in the community that are out there doing similar work. And when they come to see our buildings and our facilities, are like, "Oh, I can't believe you have this." They go, "I wish we had this." I said, "Well, you can come use our facility anytime you want." So we had the Ann Stork Centers doing their swimming here. They have a disability center in by the beach, and they're here every day swimming. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to swim. So I think collaboration is a big part of it. Having the openness to try to create more and work with many more other nonprofits as well is a key to our success as we move forward.
To build on Scott's thoughts, I would say, one, I think partnership and collaboration is critical. One, I think that there are a lot of organizations that are serving people with disabilities that through a lot of the disruptions of both the pandemic as well as other things, really struggled to maintain themselves and unfortunately closed with fluctuations in funding and so on and so forth. The partnership, knowing that, in case when we work together, 1+1 doesn't equal 2, it often equals 5, because we can maximize both our impact and our reach. And that's really important. On the other side of it, I think for us, the ongoing need of identification, I think what Scott said was very Abrahamic, which is like, we're not waiting for people to walk into the tent and then trying to serve them. We're actually going outside of the tent and really searching and trying to understand and anticipate needs before they're even at our doorstep. And I think that's critical in the consistent evolution of who the JCC is and who the JCC will become, because it's malleable. And while we have sort of core businesses that we will theoretically continue to do in perpetuity, there are other pieces where there is flexibility of the ways that we integrate with those core programs and also develop new things. I would say the last piece is really Jewish joy. I think that the world is, I mentioned multiple times, it's a really hard place. And if you're already starting from a hard place and then you also happen to be part of a Jewish community or on a Jewish journey, our responsibility is to make sure that you have the opportunity to experience Jewish joy. Because if you only get the complications and the difficulty of Jewish life, then it'd be harder to opt in. It would be harder to choose this community. It would be harder to choose Jewish life. And we need to bring joy to all people, but in particular through the lens of what it is to be uniquely Jewish.
I think, we start with the Jewish value, we serve the Jewish community, and we welcome the broader community into this enterprise that we offer of building and growing. And we hope that people can see themselves in our work and that we can look outside the window into what the future is. And the future is our ability to be together, to be whole. The three of us work together. We're hundreds and thousands of miles apart. And we work in this enterprise of the Jewish Community Center movement to be able to better peoplehood across North America and the world. So I thank you both for your friendship, your partnership, and for being with us today on Total Wellness at the J.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Todd.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
At the Tucson J, everyone belongs and some people join. For more information about our work, go to TucsonJCC.org.